we're back in the smoke-filled room with yet another packed episode. As we're here in 2024, I think this may be a record for how long our agenda is. So there is no way we're going to get into all this, but we're going to try. We've got some special guests with us today. We have Aaron Del Mar from the Republican State Central Committee. He's also the Palatine Township Republican Committeeman, also the Highway Commissioner there in Palatine, amongst 3,000 other things that I'm sure you do, Aaron. Thanks for joining us this week.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, Collin. You're a brave man to have me on.
Well, we've got Lane with the beat button ready to go, so we are we're safe, I hope. And also with us, we've got Dr. Cornel Darden. He's the president and CEO of the Southland Black Chamber of Commerce. And we've had a dearth of well-dressed people on this podcast, so Cornel is here to show us how it's done. Good to have you, Cornel.
Thanks for having me.
All right, we're going to get right into it. I've got Michael and Chris from our political team. You know me, I'm Collin, but we got to get right into our topics because I know Cornel's got to leave in about a half hour. We're recording this on Thursday, and I know he's busy. So let's get right into our first topic. We've talked a lot about Southern Illinois lately, so we're going to start here in Chicago and Cook County. Chris, I know you've been wanting to talk about the Cook County State's Attorney's race for, 2 months at this point? So here you go. Start us off. What's going on with the State's Attorney's race?
So the Cook County State's Attorney's race is honestly a snooze fest right now because nothing really seems to be happening in it. It's a race between Eileen O'Neill Burke, who is the white conservative candidate, and Clayton Harris III, who is the handpicked successor of Kim Foxx by Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle. Burke's been rolling out a number of key endorsements over the last few weeks. She got Mike Quigley's endorsement. She got a couple Chicago aldermen endorsing her this week. Unions are lining up behind her, and she also got the endorsement of one of our guests here today from the Southland Black Chamber of Commerce. She just rolled out that endorsement. So she's rolling out a lot of endorsements, pretty solid endorsements, and she had a really good fundraising quarter, but this doesn't mean anything if nothing else is going to happen. There's word that the campaign's going to be over-reliant on TV, whereas Clayton Harris is going to be over-reliant on mail. I haven't seen any of that yet either on either side. So it's a little concerning that not much is supposed to be happening in the race to succeed Kim Foxx. As of right now, this is Clayton Harris's race to lose. He has the backing of the party. He has a demographic advantage by having the support of progressives and most of the African-American community, which plays well in a Democratic primary. Burke has a money advantage, but the question right now is if she's going to use it. Right now, I haven't seen her use any.
Yeah, I mean, she's up, $100K in the fundraising battle. So Burke's solid on the money, and she's got a ton of endorsements. I know 150 and others are there, but you can see it's going to be bloody. I mean, if these candidates use their money, Harris has already shown it's going to be a bloody race. I mean, attacking her for prosecuting an 11-year-old in a murder case not that long ago. I mean, the problem for Burke is going to be being a prosecutor. There's certainly things that can be used against her in a Democratic primary pretty well. So it's a race that has the potential to get pretty bloody. Aaron and Cornel, I know you're both in Cook County. What are you guys seeing about that race?
Well, let me jump in here first and talk real quick. I don't know why any Republican would be getting involved in Democratic primaries, endorsing anybody or anything else, but that's for each person to decide on their own. I know Clayton Harris personally. He was the executive director for the Illinois International Port Authority when I served under the Rauner administration as a board member on there. He is a very smooth character, has a lot of relationships. Many of you don't know that he was the former chief of staff for Rod Blagojevich, which I'm sure is going to come out in some of the media that's going to play out soon. But that should tell you that he has a lot of insider politics. He's got a lot of friends. As the executive director of the Port Authority, he made sure that he was going to Springfield regularly. He was responsible for getting over $10 million that was a loan that the Illinois state government gave to the Port Authority forgiven, which was a Rauner veto that he went through the Illinois legislature and was able to get a veto override. So that is no easy task to do, even with a Republican governor. So I think that a lot of what's going to happen that you're seeing as far as fundraising and all of that, she might be getting individual donors, but you can't forget about the Democratic machine in Cook County and Tony Preckwinkle's pot of money that she can start spending to all of her candidates. So while it might not be sitting in Clayton's account, he does have access to that piggy bank, and there's no way that Tony Preckwinkle is going to let somebody have that position, that's right next to the hall to her, to be somebody that she can't have a thumb on. So money aside, relationships aside, I think Clayton beats her on the relationship side and the ability to have that insider politics. And again, he's got access to Tony Preckwinkle's huge piggy bank.
What are you hearing,
And,
Cornel?
and as was stated earlier, the Southland Black Chamber of Commerce announced our endorsement of her, which was pretty ironic because since we're a Black Chamber of Commerce, most people assume that we're just going to endorse all Black people. And that in a race like this, where there's a lot of racial tension because of the attacks, I mean, that press conference where all of those Black elected officials, I mean, that was an A-list. It looked like every Black elected official in Cook County was against Eileen Burke. But the Southland Black Chamber of Commerce is not about race. We're about getting the best candidates that can help our members, whoever those members are. Now, we have white members, Hispanic members, Asian members, you name it. And right now, there's a huge problem in Chicago. We have a 30% vacancy rate on the Mag Mile. Downtown, people are leaving and businesses are leaving in droves. You see, I have a Burberry scarf on. This scarf cost about $700. And this year I bought a new blue coat and I want to get a new blue Burberry scarf. So I figure with the $1,000 limit on getting prosecuted, what's to stop me from going to get my blue scarf? Maybe I should just do a video and steal the scarf just to make a point.
I mean, listen, from a business community standpoint, you want safer streets, you want crime addressed, and from a policy perspective, Eileen O'Neill Burke is going to be stronger on crime than Clayton Harris, who was a Kim Foxx acolyte. Now, from a political sense, I mean, I'm a political animal. Many of us, just from a general election standpoint, know that Clayton Harris will be very bad for the Democratic Party in Cook County and would help a lot of our Republican candidates. So secretly, again, bad policy, good politics. We see Clayton Harris, if he pulls this off, it's going to help a lot of Republicans throughout Cook County because Clayton Harris is Kim Foxx V2, if not even more progressive. So I can see why, as a leader of a Chamber of Commerce, Cornel, you guys would be all in on someone like Eileen O'Neill Burke. From a policy perspective, it makes a lot of sense.
Well, it makes a lot more sense to try to get Clayton Harris through there because he's a target-rich environment, right?
Yeah.
If you have him in a general election going into the end of this year in November, all you're going to be seeing is Blagojevich. Here is the chief of staff for Blagojevich. I think they're saving that nugget to, drop that little bomb closer onto the election because if they start talking about it now, that people will become immune to it, later on. So that's one they probably have sitting in the back ready to launch right closer to the election in March. But I can tell you right now, I think I've gone against Tony Preckwinkle, won a couple times, lost more than I've won, right, as the Cook County Republican chairman. You don't ever want to underestimate her. She has a very unique political prowess to her that is very subtle, where Mike Madigan might be the velvet hammer. Tony Preckwinkle is the velvet sledgehammer.
I like that. Let's, I know we got limited time. Let's go to our next topic. Staying there in Cook County, going into Chicago now. The real estate tax referendum is going to be on the ballot in the March 19th primary. And this thing is already becoming a gigantic political battle. The Illinois Realtors have announced they're going to drop $1 million in the campaign against it. Meanwhile, supporters are saying that they raised another $200,000 from the Chicago's teachers union. This thing is going to be a multi-million-dollar campaign. It's just heating up. Knowing we've got some people on this podcast who've got a lot of insight into Chicago, just want to open it up. What are you guys hearing about this referendum? Where do you think it's going to go? It looks like this is going to be. I mean, it's already up on TV. There's already a TV ad up about this. This thing is going to get a real hot and heavy in the next 2 months.
Well,
sorry to
Collin,
monopolize.
The Southland Black Chamber of Commerce is actually named as a plaintiff in the lawsuit. So it's a log roller argument that we have where basically the way the questions are phrased in the referendum, they should be thrown out. They confuse the voter, and I think we got a good case in our lawsuit. But right now, the way it looks, the progressive tax was defeated in Chicago 70-30. And of course, it won 70-30 in Chicago, but was defeated statewide. So based on that history, I mean, we're looking at a 70-30 spread to overcome. That's going to be tough. And right now, the opposition that's in support of Bring Home Chicago, they've been knocking doors for 2 months. So we haven't seen much from the people that want to defeat this referendum as far as campaigning.
Yeah.
One thing that I'll mention is that
Go ahead, Aaron.
Sorry, Collin. What I think a lot of people in Chicago really don't understand, and what makes it confusing to what he said earlier, is that this is really a regressive tax. What they're catching in their net, right? They're trying to do a wide net to try to catch all the millionaires and billionaires. But what they're not understanding is that there's a lot of people that will have 3 flats, 6 flats that are living in one of those units, utilize the other units as part of the way to pay for those mortgages and have a retirement plan. And they're going to go and tax these people's retirement plan. That's really where it is. Because if you're living in, say, a 3 flat, you're in the first floor and you have 2 other renters in second and third floor, and you're just a regular Chicago citizen, not a millionaire or a billionaire, when you go to sell that investment to move to Florida or Tennessee or Nevada or wherever else, that transfer tax is going to affect you in a highly negative way. So when they're talking about dropping that, $1 million bomb on everybody, $1 million isn't what it was 10 years ago. That is going to affect a lot of regular day people, not just the magnificent mile people living in the high rises at Lake Point Tower or the Trump Tower and anywhere else. You're going to be seeing people on the southwest side of Chicago that have an evaluation of that are going to try to keep it under $999,000 so they don't get whacked for that 5% tax on top of it. Those are the things that are going to be hit. And the realtors are going to be suppressing a lot of the different deals that are going through. They're going to be telling people, hey, it doesn't make any sense to sell it for $1.2 million. It makes sense to sell it for $999,000, which is going to cut into their 5.5 point commission that they're making on either side of the sale. So there's
well, I
a lot
think
less
to
volume.
that point, Aaron, it's also just, you talk about property tax values. If you're artificially keeping certain property values down, property values across a region are an average, right? So if you're keeping some property values down, it's going to be felt by everybody. I'd also imagine if you're somebody who's a landlord and you're buying properties or you're trying to rent those out, you're going to recoup that money somehow, which means you're going to charge more rent. So there's a lot of ways this is going to hurt low income and middle income families, working families in the city.
Not only that, but you got to think about the tax base. If all these sales keep going for less than $1 million and they're selling for $990,000, $995,000, right? That's going to be where they assess the value of that property across the board. So the assessor now is going to be in the middle of a fight because the true value of any property is what a traditional sale of it is. So that tax burden is now going to be shifted to everybody else in the planet to be able to make up for those. So they're going to be having less revenue.
Well,
that's going to
you
be
know who
going to
wins on this, and we both live in Cook County. I can tell you from experience, Katie will actually value it higher than what you paid for it. So you're going to have to go hire an attorney to go get it lowered. So it's just property tax attorneys who, once again, are going to win because of all this. Because Katie ain't going to assess a property at what was paid for it. He's going to assess it at what he thinks it's worth, which is oftentimes way more than he paid for it. And so you're going to then have to go get an attorney to fight that. So once again, it's not regular Illinoisans or Chicagoans who win because of these policies. They may be well-intentioned, but as usual, it's the working man who gets screwed.
Bad news for Mike
right
Madigan.
now,
He just shut down his law firm.
and Collin, right now, the ordinance has no direction on what the money's going to be spent for. They're just saying it's going to be spent for homelessness, but there's no plan. There's no directives. There's nothing there.
Well, what do you expect? Do you expect Brandon Johnson to roll out a plan? I mean, my goodness, Cornel, how much requirements you going to put on the guy? I mean, this goodness. I think to that point, it's a great transition to our next topic, which is a poll came out, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and Brandon Johnson's approval number is at 21%. Keep in mind, this is somebody who hasn't even been in office for a year, or maybe now it's a full year. No, it's not even a full year yet. It's still got a couple more months. I don't think I've ever seen a politician this disliked that quickly. I mean, when you say only 21% favorability, and that was only 70% who said that they strongly or that was excellent. 14% just said good. That's problematic in your first year in office.
It took Lightfoot a little bit longer, at least. I mean, Lightfoot, you had about a year of we really didn't know what was going to happen, how bad it could be, and then the riots happened, which tanked her approval rating. But this was in a matter of months, and you see it every day in City Hall where Johnson just doesn't really seem to know what he's doing. He's not showing up to press conferences. He's not articulating anything to the media. He's in war with Pritzker right now, and you have to follow cap facts to actually understand what the hell the city and the state is going to do about any of this stuff. It's absurd. Politically speaking, you have to ask yourself what demographic still supports Brandon Johnson. The African American community is moving against him because of this migrant issue. The white community and the Hispanic community was never behind him, and neither was downtown. So it might just be the stupid progressives who might still be behind him. I'd like to see the crosstabs of this poll, but it's bad news for re-election. I know we're re-election 2027, but I remember 2019. We were talking about who the next mayor was going to be after Lightfoot got elected. So we're talking about who the next mayor is now. You got to start having those conversations, because I don't know what Johnson could do to get himself out of this hole right now, because right now it's not looking
good. It's spiraling.
The reason it's
worse,
not working. The reason it's not working is because Johnson's not running the mayor's office. The Chicago Teachers Union is running the mayor's office, and they're very ill-equipped to be able to handle the different problems that Chicago has that fit into their little progressive box. Just like you said, he's getting hit from all sides. He's got a migrant issue where he thinks that he needs to be this welcoming city, and he wants to keep that title of a sanctuary city, but he's not having. And he's moving resources from, the African American communities, the Hispanic communities, to handle this migrant issue. And you have African Americans and all other Chicagoans that are like, hey, we've been here for years. You've not even helped us, yet you're opening the door and you're helping everybody else. That on top of the school issues that he's running into, where he's trying to shut down the charter schools. They just canceled all the funding for a lot of the charter schools, which is going to have a bigger upheaval on his hand when the Illinois legislature finally cuts that money off. And, you have 63,000 students that are going to be displaced, 15,000 of them that are African-American students that their parents are jumping over 3 different negative schools to get them to a right school, right? And now they're going to be like, hey, no, you're going to send us down to the school where our kid doesn't know anyone, that our kid is, we're specifically going 6 miles out of our way to get him to a better school where he could actually learn he or she could actually learn how to read and write.
Have a future.
Graduate, right, and have a future after high school. I think that this is just the tip of the iceberg. I think there's a lot more chaos that's going to ensue just on what he's already proposing.
Yeah, I thought having 2 straight mayors who don't even make the runoff in their re-elects, it's crazy. Cornel, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to say he's in a no-win situation. If he starts to do the right thing, which I think most Chicago would believe in, then guess what? The CTU and his base is going to turn against him. That's why he's having panic attacks all the time. And right now, he is turning back on the migrants. He's pulling back off of the natural gas ban and some of the other things that were very controversial. But guess what that's going to do? That's going to turn his progressive base away from him. And it's not going to be enough to turn the detractors into supporters. So he's screwed.
Yeah, you hit it on the head. I mean, Chris and I
said,
talked about it when he was elected. I think that night we talked about it. We did a video and we said, I don't know what he's going to do, because he's to govern. He's stuck in a tough spot, because his progressive base is not going to be happy if he doesn't do the things that they want, and if he compromises in any way. But to govern a city like Chicago, you got to be more of a pragmatist. And Johnson's been in a tough spot since day one. And Cornel, you're right. I don't know what he does to turn it around.
Collin, one of the things you want to watch and you want to see, and I'm over here just getting ready to whip up my popcorn and start enjoying it, right? And watching the dumpster fire, is going to be seeing what happens with this relationship between Johnson and Pritzker. Because as we all know, Pritzker is getting ready to run for president, right? Maybe not in this year if Uncle Joe makes it all the way through the primary. And, that's its own story.
Great Uncle Joe.
Right. Yeah. Papa Joe is, this whole form of elder abuse they're having in the White House. But the reason that he's getting upset is because anything that Brandon Johnson does, right or wrong, right, and more on the wrong side, because that's what's been happening, is going to fall on Pritzker's run for president, right? So every misstep is not going to be targeted to Brandon Johnson. It's going to be targeted to the governor of Illinois who's running for the White House, and it's going to be J.B. Pritzker. So when all this migrant crisis continues to get worse and worse and worse, and there's bigger problems, there's more crime, there's more theft, there's more, situations where people are not getting access to health care and services that these migrants need, just like the rest of us, that eventually is going to run its way all the way down to Springfield, right? Just like everybody talks about. You flush twice in Chicago and ends up in Springfield.
Well, and I think to your point, Chris mentioned sort of the back and forth on Capitol facts between Johnson and Pritzker, you can always tell what Pritzker's thinking because Rich Miller will be the first to know it because he's basically a member of the staff, of the press staff of Pritzker's administration. So when he's even saying, Johnson is basically saying, screw you all by April, I'm going back to what I ran on and I'm just going to focus on my progressive agenda. That's what Pritzker's people are saying, that they've got a problem with this. So it clearly is going to be, as you say, Aaron, it's going to get worse and worse between those two. And from a Republican perspective, that's on my side. I don't want to speak for anyone who may not be as political as some of us may be, but from the Republican Party's perspective, the more that Brandon Johnson becomes a negative for Democrats and progressives, the more that Pritzker and Johnson fight amongst each other, that leaves opportunities for people who want to show maybe a different agenda and a different perspective. So, I don't, as you said, Aaron, I'm popping the popcorn on my side because the more that this progressive agenda fails in Chicago, it shows a contrast, and maybe we can bring things back to common sense in this state.
What do you think is going to happen when Pritzker starts trying to run ads when he runs for president in battleground states, right? In swing states. This sort of situation in Chicago doesn't play well in Michigan. It doesn't play well in Pennsylvania. Kills you in Florida, right? You know what I mean? If you look at even DeSantis winning in Miami over the Democrats, they already know. They've seen what happens when you have this kind of progressiveness in these states and how it deteriorates very quickly. I just think it's great. I think that's great that Pritzker's here because I'd rather keep him consolidated in Illinois, right? Forget about coronavirus. We got Pritzker virus, right? I don't want to share this with the rest of the nation.
Well, it seems to be our number one export in this state. It's ever since 2008, we've been a professional exporter of progressive politicians over to DC. So I want to jump into a couple political or even policy topics here because while we have you, Cornel, I want to get your perspective on this. So I'm going a little bit further on the agenda. We're a little out of order today. But there was a bill that was filed in Chicago or in Springfield that led to all sorts of problems. So Representative Justin Slaughter put a bill through in Chicago that would basically ban all traffic stops. When I saw this thing come through, I looked at the list of legislation. I always check every day to see what's been added. There's a lot. I saw this one and I was like, seriously? This thing is going to explode. And within like 24 hours, it was on fire. So basically it says that no law enforcement officer can stop a motor vehicle if they don't have registration plates or stickers, if they've got an expired sticker, if they were speeding where it was, I think, unless it's a misdemeanor or felony. So 25 miles an hour or up. So 24 miles an hour over the speed limit, they can't pull you over. Improper lane usage, vehicle headlights and lamps, tinting, mirrors. Basically, if you look through this whole list, they're basically this bill would make it impossible for law enforcement to pull over almost any vehicles. Now, Slaughter says the goal of this was to bring attention to the fact that blacks are pulled over more frequently than whites or any other race. That was his goal. I can tell you, though, the legislation just lit everybody on fire. The Illinois Sheriff's Association freaked out and said, "What, are you kidding me with this bill?" And a whole lot of other people freaked out on this. I'm curious what you guys are hearing. From a political perspective, I see this as a massive misstep by Slaughter and the progressive agenda, because now all you've done is handed Republicans a great issue come November in the next election, because all Republicans have to say is, look, Democrats are so soft on crime, they don't even want to let cops pull anybody over. I mean, this is just a gift to Republicans on this issue. I don't know why you'd ever file this bill in the first place. It seems like a massive misstep to me. What do you guys think?
Well, he doesn't even have a sponsor. He's the only person. Nobody's either on either House or the Senate has said they're going to sign their name to it. It's totally ludicrous. And if you saw the news reporting yesterday from Chicago Tribune when the Illinois Sheriff's Department came out against it, it was hilarious because he crapped the bed. He's like, "Oh, I'm going to go ahead and withdraw it. This is not going to go. The language is going to change." That thing was dead on arrival. But even for the African American community, and I can't speak to it because I'm brown, right? They don't want that, right? I mean, this is what you can't pull somebody up their lane usage. What happens for a DUI, right? These are craziness that's going on in Chicago.
Yeah, I'm curious, Cornel, what have you heard about this, if anything? I mean, do you think it's obviously a conversation to be had? I've seen the stats, and there's a conversation here to be had about how different people are treated differently when it comes to law enforcement stops. But this bill seemed like a really, really misguided attempt to do that.
Yeah, I think where they're coming from with the bill is that Black individuals are treated differently when it comes to traffic stops. I actually don't share that personal experience. I actually get let go way more than I should have, to tell you the truth. And it's probably because of the way I dress, Collin. You can ask my wife about that. She's always flabbergasted. I'm dead in the wrong and I get let go. So I can't
You know
personally
what?
claim.
Here's what you and I are both capitalists. Let's start a class and let's make a bunch of money on Cornel's tips for getting out of traffic tickets. We could be millionaires here.
Right. But I wouldn't want to make light of that situation where a whole race of people feel like they're being treated differently. So I definitely don't want to make light of it. But truly, maybe I'm just a lucky guy or something like that. But that law is asinine. And I would tell Justice Slaughter that to his face. I know him very well. I can't believe he will put something up. I wonder if they replaced him and had an alien go and like file a bill, or, you know what I mean, a surrogate or something. Like, what are you thinking? Like, are you crazy? I wonder if it's some type of a weird plot going on with all of these bills that are basically going to allow crime to thrive. The retail theft policy of the state's attorney office in Cook County, the Safety Act, and now this. I think is horrible.
Well, I just feel like one thing, like, how did it even get to this point? Like, it's not like he just drafted the bill totally himself and then submitted it himself and all those things. Like, it goes through a process. You think somebody would say, like, hey, man, I don't think this is a good idea. And I just got
I don't know if there's an approval. I don't know if there is an approval process, Michael. I mean, there probably should be, so you could avoid.
Well, there's not like an approval process. You can file whatever you want, but multiple people looked at this bill. You'd think somebody would. I mean, maybe he just doesn't care, but you think somebody would say, like, "What are you thinking?" Like, yeah. I just got my. I just paid like $151 or whatever the absurdity is for my new license plate sticker because it expires. It just expired. What was I thinking with a bill like this? There's no point. Like,
yeah, they can't pull you over. I mean, they couldn't pull me over. A ridiculous bill. And politically, I mean, Chris, you don't have to work very hard to spin this in any campaign. Basically, if you want to make extreme politicians or Springfield or crime an issue in an election, this bill just makes it real easy to contrast with a Democratic opponent.
You're right, and there's a couple funny things in regards to Slaughter specifically. The first one is it's amazing how stupid these maps are because Justin Slaughter's my state representative, which Lord knows he has my interest, not mine. The second thing is Slaughter is a primary opponent this cycle, and my understanding is that the House Dems are taking this primary opponent pretty seriously. They're kind of concerned. So when you have a primary opponent you're concerned about, why do you put forward a bill that says traffic stops are now illegal? In Slaughter's district, yes, it's plurality African American, but it's got people like myself in it. It's got Orland Park in it. It's got, Oak Forest in it. It's got some pretty moderate Democratic areas to go into, and they're not going to resonate with no more traffic stops. So this is a political miscue on his end. And if this gets any further, this is going to be great ammunition to use against him and his allies.
Well, I mean, I think it's great ammunition right now. We talk about on this podcast what Republicans, what center-right people need to do. This should be, this really honestly should have already been in fundraising appeals from the state party, any Republican who's trying to raise money. This is an easy, quick text message or email out. Did you see the craziness that's about to happen? Donate $10, donate $20. I mean, this is what nationally Republicans and Democrats tend to do pretty well. We're getting better here in the state, but we still got some work to do. This is easy fodder to get people whipped up on social media or over email and get some low dollar contributions. We're recording this on Thursday, releasing this on Friday. There's still time if you're watching this podcast. Put out an email right now and raise some money if you're a right of center interest, because all you got to do is put what this is on the ballot, and the others, you're going to raise a ton of money.
The Palatine Township Republicans will be sending out an email later on today with that exact advice.
I love it. I love it. All right. So, Cornel, I know we don't have you for too much longer, but I appreciate you being with us as we record this. Let me go to one more political topic that's kind of in your region before we lose you, or if we do lose you, that's okay. But Chris, I know there in Senate District 19, there's a development here where the Senate Republicans' preferred candidate has been kicked off the ballot. What's going on there in 19?
So there are three candidates on the Republican side in 19th Senate District. There's Max Solomon, who's an idiot. Samantha Gasco, who is, a religious leader type person, very, very new to politics, very passionate. And Hillary Kurzawa, who is a local Frankfort Township trustee and really the preferred candidate of a lot of Republicans in the district. Max Solomon filed objections to both Gaska and Kurzawa's petitions. Now, Gaska's held up in the circuit court, Kurzawa's didn't. Kurzawa's objection was based around the fact she's using a different name. It's like she filed under her maiden name, not her married name. And Gaska was objected to because she wrote the November election date on her petitions instead of the March primary election date. Irregardless, there's a couple of things I want to bring up about this. The first one is I think the way that the State Board of Elections handles this with women and their names on the ballot is stupid. I think it's really sexist. It's
not a name change, and we've seen this. And we actually have there's a race where one of our clients is in it, where another candidate got knocked off, which helped our client. So I don't want to get in trouble with my client by saying this, but it's not a name change. I mean, it is, but you got married. Like there really should be a different threshold here,
right? But the state, a lot of these judges and election officials still uphold this.
But I'm convinced if it goes up to the appellate court, she gets put back on. If it's just over the name change, if she does take this to the appellate court, she'll get put back on. And if Fogarty's her lawyer, if the Senate Republicans are with her, that means Fogarty's her lawyer, which means they'll probably appeal it, which means I think she maybe gets back on the ballot. Am I crazy, or is that?
No, that's what I assume is going to happen. But all this does is waste people's candidates' time here. And the other issue is even though Sam Gaska got the circuit court said she can be on the ballot, Solomon's still appealing to the appellate court to get her kicked off. So even if Kurzawa gets approval from the appellate court, Solomon's just going to kick this thing upstairs to the Supreme Court because all he's doing is wasting people's time.
Yeah, and that's the goal, right? I think, if it goes to the Supreme Court, she's going to be on the ballot for sure. I mean, the Supreme Court has significantly opened up ballot access in Illinois over the last decade. People like me used to have a lot more fun knocking candidates off the ballot back when it was easier to do that. So and we'll see how that plays out, but it does waste a lot of time and a lot of resources. And Hastings, he's going to be tough to beat with the Democrats coming in with tons of money this time around, but it is one of the best pickup opportunities, or at least one of the few pickup opportunities for Republicans in the Senate. So 19's, high on their list. This isn't going to help.
Think about this. This guy is running for her re-election after putting his wife in a headlock, beating her up, throwing her against the wall. Right?
Allegedly, right?
Allegedly. Where are the pitchforks and torches, right? Back in the day, they'd be stringing this guy up for beating on his wife. This is ludicrous. Here's the thing, too. The politics may be most people in that area, unfortunately, are programmed to vote for Democrats, right? Hastings' dad is the mayor in the area. He's the heir apparent. He was supposed to be running statewide. Remember he filed petitions to run against Jesse White for Secretary of State and then pulled them back out just so we could have a little placeholder for him in the last rotation, which obviously Giannulli was crushed. But this guy won the last rotation. We had a really good candidate against him, and he still no support from the Illinois Democratic Caucus. He still was able to do it on his own fundraising and doing it on his own name and win. So if you put a Max Solomon, and I know Max, and Max is a nice guy. I enjoy watching the Max Solomon show when he goes out there and has his little speech and talks about this, that, and the other thing, right? But if his campaign for Senate is anything like his campaign for governor was, he's dead on arrival as well.
I like to say that's actually my my Senate district. That's where I live. I live in Matson, and the Southland Black Chamber of Commerce was against Senator Hastings, and we actually endorsed the Republican candidate Patrick Sheehan in that last race. We helped Patrick Sheehan a good deal on election day. The numbers actually showed that he was winning. I think the Republican Party has to do a lot more to get into the Black community, and we fail every time. And that's from my perspective. Hillary, she hasn't even reached out to us. She knows exactly who we are. Again, we're the largest chamber of commerce in the Southland, Black, white, or otherwise. But we're the largest Black chamber of commerce. And Hastings won that race in the Black community where Sheehan didn't have a presence. So it's not going to happen. And I didn't know I can call Max Solomon an idiot.
Well,
I didn't know that was allowed, so I didn't say it.
Let me say this. I gotta get my licks in here. I live in Bremen Township, and Max Solomon is the Bremen Township Republican committeeman. Ever since he took over last year, we've done nothing. Ugats. Nothing has gotten accomplished. So if Max Solomon gave 1 ounce of the vigor that he's doing to kick these 2 women off the ballot, he gave that to the Republican organization in Bremen Township, we'd be in a much better position. No, he spends all this time trying to kick people off the ballot to run for office again because he's ran God knows how many times instead of doing his job as Bremen Township Republican committeeman. And if Max isn't watching, do something.
I'm
Here's
old
what I can
enough
tell
to
you real
remember
quick on that.
I'm old enough to remember when Bremen Township was actually like a strong Republican organization.
Yeah. I can tell you this, I'm the vice chair of the Cook County Republican Party, used to be the chairman myself. I personally have reached out to Max Solomon in the last month and a half, 4 times. I've called him, left voicemails, I've texted him because we want to get him. He's not been to one central committee meeting for the Cook County Republican Party. He's not returned phone calls, website's down, Facebook's down, everything's down. So there's no interaction from that. And that's certainly disturbing, right? You need to take care of the job that you were just elected to first before you start looking for higher office. And so if you can't handle the Republican committeeman's job in Bremen Township, how are you going to be able to foster relationships anywhere to try to get
and let's
higher
be honest,
office?
it's not that hard of a job. If Aaron can do it, I mean, come on, it's not that hard of a job.
Right? Clearly it's not based on luck.
I got to run, but I want to leave with this note, especially on Max. I've been a Republican my whole life, and I grew up in Bremen Township, so it hurts to see what happened there. Max rubs me the wrong way because he's against affirmative action. I don't like any Black person that's against affirmative action, to tell you the truth. And he comes off as a person that's holier than thou, this far-right conservative, but he was a Democrat a few years ago. I mean, I can't believe that a grown man would switch parties and all of a sudden become the epitome of what it is to be a conservative in his new party. I think he's some type of weirdo or some type of Democratic plant. But I'm signing off. Thanks, guys.
Cornel, thanks for being with us. We appreciate it. All right, let's shift. We're going to go to some Southern Illinois races because there's some big stuff going down, and Michael has been patient, though I'm sure his legs are bouncing under the table there, hoping to talk about some Southern IL races. So let's talk Bost and Bailey. We've got fundraising numbers on these federal races, and Bost had a significant fundraising campaign haul. We've also got potentially some inside information on support that Bailey was looking to have, though Finkston already scooped it a couple days ago. Bost is up on TV. Looks like Bailey's going to run one singular ad in one region during the Super Bowl. I don't know what's going on. Michael, tell me what's happening there.
Yeah, so we just got fundraising numbers yesterday. Because the filing deadline for federal is later than state. So Mike's got, over $1 million cash on hand. He raised $468,000 last quarter. Darren's got around 117 cash on hand. He raised 150,000 last quarter. So Mike's been steady with his fundraising all the way through, putting up, that 450, 470, that kind of range all, this past year. Whereas Darren put up less this last quarter than he did the quarter before that. And obviously a pretty high
Michael, he was supposed to, what we heard is that he was supposed to hit a certain fundraising number if DC was going to come save his butt, and he didn't get to that number.
Yeah, we were hearing the Club for Growth gave him a benchmark of $200,000. If he was able to raise $200,000 in the fourth quarter, that they would put some money in support of him, mail, TV, those kind of things. And he obviously didn't meet that benchmark. I heard from some people that are kind of aligned with him that they were aggravated because they were telling him like, hey, you've got to reach this number, like sell an expedition, sell a tractor. We don't care. Like find the money. And Darren wasn't willing to do that or didn't take their advice, one of the two. So here we are. Poor fundraising numbers for Darren. And he spent $15,000 on a 30-second ad during the Super Bowl in one media market.
Yeah, the important word there was ad. One single ad. We're not talking about an ad buy or a flight. It's one small media market. It's one buy, one ad. The only reason you do that is to get press out of it, right? I mean, because you're not actually, it's not going to move the needle. So you're hoping to get media from it or something.
I'm interested to see what they decide to run. Obviously there's that, 2-minute introductory video that they could pull from. Obviously they've got B-roll, so they could, make an ad off of that. But I would imagine that they're probably just going to go like super negative, and because that's kind of their Hail Mary. I mean, they can't really just run one positive ad about Darren and expect to move the needle, really.
You have to. You have to. I mean, for this to be work, you have to go real negative and then hope you get a lot of press coverage from it afterwards.
Yeah.
One thing that I don't know if you guys are seeing is that Washington has, in a secretive way, gone through the Illinois GOP and has supported Mike Bost through a $100,000 transfer of media buy that was raised originally when Kevin McCarthy was out here for a fundraiser that he did. You know, those funds, again, were federal funds that were raised on behalf of the party that were funneled back through. But that kind of gives you kind of the idea that Washington is trying to, you know, push their guy through the finish line. I mean, this race is a race that should have never happened. You got guys that vote 100% the same way every time, every day. I think that, you know, this is one of those things that Darren and should have probably learned from Jeannie Ives, that when she ran for governor, you know what I mean, turned around and ran for Congress thinking that, you know, all that earned media that they got and all the different ad spends that Uline put into the account. I mean, he's got, you know, almost universal name ID down there, but Mike Bost is very well liked. And people still remember when that dog bit his daughter and Mike went and shot and killed the dog. They still remember, let my people go. And he's throwing, you know, the 9,000 page budget report that nobody was able to read up in the Illinois House, right? He's got a lot of really goodwill. He works all of his counties and precincts hard. And the Bailey campaign hasn't really picked up on that. And they're just trying to win on the tails of their last gubernatorial election.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the Bost campaign's got to be real happy because they were rightfully nervous when Bailey announced this race. Bailey had a path to victory, but they haven't run an overly strong campaign. And every week that passes, the window gets smaller and smaller for Darren's chances to win this primary. And this is yet another situation where, I mean, if I've got limited cash, I'm not wasting it on a Super Bowl ad buy. I mean, you got to get to Republicans. The Super Bowl is when you get everybody watching TV, not your hard R Republican types. I don't know why you aren't on Fox News and you know, everywhere where you actually get those conservatives and those Republicans paying attention all day. And for $15K, you know, you could own a media market on Fox News for a couple of weeks, especially down in that region. So I don't know what's going on. The only reason this makes sense, and we'll find out in 2 weeks, but the only reason this makes sense is if they got some big plan to get earned media out of this. But based on the quality of the campaign that's been run so far, I don't really know that that's what's happening.
Well, they're taking a page out of Jeannie
raised,
Ives'
I guess,
book.
like around $300,000 total. They've got $117,000 cash on hand. But what do they have to show for that? You know, $200,000 that they've spent. We haven't seen any digital ads. You know, they spent money on yard signs, 4x4s, salaries, text messaging. But I've heard that people that were on his text list from the governor's race that are in DuPage and Chicago and all over the state are getting text messages about Mike Bost and how he's a rhino. And it's like, okay, yeah, maybe you get a couple bucks out of those people, probably not, but they sure as heck can't vote for you. So what do they got to show for it?
I've gotten probably 7 texts in the last 2 months from Darren Bailey. I live in Palatine, Illinois, 5 hours away from where that base is, right? Telling me that I should donate to Darren. So I can speak for that firsthand, that I've gotten those text messages. I mean, I certainly enjoy reading them because I think it's funny. The other joke, kind of insider joking, is as much as I like a lot of their staff, I'm friends with a lot of those people. You know, we kind of, even though, you know, they defeated Gary and I in that gubernatorial race, you're still Republicans and we're going to support our candidates in the general election. Their polling is crazy. Saying that they're 6 points ahead of polling of Mike Bost in that race they just released a couple of weeks ago. They were saying that, you know, right before the election that they were 6 points ahead J.B. Pritzker. Well, I don't know about y'all, but I remember at 7:01, you know, Fox News, ABC, CBS, WGN calls it for Pritzker, and everyone's their phones are getting blown up. They're like, what do you mean? How can they call it? It's only 7:01. The polls just closed. You're like, dude, you're going to lose by double-digit points, my friend. This race is over before it began. That's why I don't trust their polling out there. If it's not done by Cor Strategies, you just can't believe it.
Yeah, well, remember during that gubernatorial race, they were making fun of our poll and saying we were wrong when we were giving the actual numbers, and then they were off by like 20%. So,
and they were worked up when we had Mike up 7. But yeah, this they did a poll. They released their polling from August, the same, like literally 2 weeks after we did our poll, saying Mike was up 7. Their polling said that Darren was up 11, and that's an 18-point margin of error. Like, come on.
Yep.
Well, yeah, that
Come on,
poll
man.
works if you just take it at everybody that lives in Darren's house, or if you're getting his
Right.
wife, his kids, his grandkids. Well, you got your 18 people over here. I think he's up 100-0.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Let's for time, let's shift over to Senate District 58. We've got a couple districts to cover. I don't want to spend too much time on these districts because we got some really juicy topics I don't want to miss here. But we got to talk about Bryant against West Kash. Simply because a couple of things. Bryant's been rolling in some endorsements. She got ASME endorsed her. She got Illinois Federation of Teachers to endorse her. That can help on a financial side, but if Kash was running an actual campaign, that could also hurt her. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. Bryant's up on TV. It's a snoozy ad, but she is up on TV. She's definitely seems to be generating some good momentum here. Meanwhile, still nothing out of Kash, though we did hear he has indeed hired Darren Bailey's campaign team, basically. So maybe there'll be improvement, maybe not, based on our previous conversation. But definitely looks like Bryant's got a lot of momentum there. What are you hearing, Michael?
Yeah, I mean, you look at State Board of Elections. I mean, she keeps posting A1s like constantly. She's getting big checks from firefighters union and all sorts of stuff. So the money's rolling in. She's up on TV. She's locking in endorsements. She's been out knocking and distributing yard signs. All we've really seen from Kash over the weekend, there's some 4x4s that kind of popped up. But we heard that they were just going to houses kind of cold and just asking like, hey, can I put a sign up? And the people didn't really know who he was or what was going on. So, it is what it is. We talked about it last week. I think that they were making some calls about maybe buying some radio ads and those kind of things. So we'll see if he puts his grandma's money where his mouth is and runs any of these ads or mail, etc. But nothing yet. So
Right. I wanted somebody to explain to me why you want to go after former prison guard. Right. I've met Terri Bryant when I was down in Southern Illinois, and she's tough as steel. Right. She's a hardcore person. Believe it or not, she lives in a double wide next to the river. I kid you not. Right. She is true to grit of who she is.
She did a video with us last year, and it was like she barely got internet there. I was like, how are you doing this video?
Right. But what I'm saying, she's a tough worker.
Yeah,
she's got that grit. The people know her. She's at every single event. She articulates her message well. And people can't be confused, right? You got to understand, down in Southern Illinois, you think that, well, we're Republicans, we're anti-union. They have a ton of prisons down there. And that whole group of prisons, that's like a family. So all the other prison guards and all the workers that are down there, and that's that's what do you say when you're in Southern Illinois, right? I mean, that is what they farm down there. They farm criminals in each of these penitentiaries. That is the economic impact that drives the Southern area.
That ASME endorsement's huge.
But that ASME endorsement's huge down there, right? Where it may kind of turn off some of the people up here by us, but we don't get to vote. So it doesn't really matter what we think.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if Kash was running a campaign, you could try to spin that. Like, I'd take the endorsement. If I'm the Senate Republicans or Senator Bryant, I happily take the ASME endorsement. But everything in politics has a plus and a minus. So if Kash actually was running a decent campaign, they'd say, look, these, Chicago liberal unions are all coming in. Like, they could do something here, but it's crickets. Now, obviously I'd prefer our incumbent Republicans stay in. I think this primary is stupid. So I hope that doesn't happen. But we're just pointing to, there's nothing out of the Kash campaign. So what is the point of this? Why are we wasting resources on a primary if they're not even going to freaking run a campaign on the other side?
No, I think the reason behind this is that a lot of the groups down south, right? Some of them are my friends, some of them I like much, and we're probably going to talk about a couple more of them in the next couple of races. So I got to be careful what I say because this is certainly being recorded and set statewide.
Tell Mark, careful what he says. What is going on with you?
Right, but if you think about it, you have a political momentum that was made when Darren Bailey won the primary, and it opened up a lot of people, a lot of ears down there. And they said, "Hey, look, if Darren can do this, and he can be on WGN, and he can be statewide, maybe I should be doing it." So they're looking for anybody they can take out to try to get another position. If you look at some of the people that Darren endorsed for state rep and state senate, you had a guy in a wheelchair that was running over here, spending $150,000 of his own money, and his campaign speech when I was down there in Southern Illinois is, I'm for Darren Bailey, and whatever Darren Bailey's about, I'm about too. That was his campaign speech. It took about a whole 6 seconds, right? So I think that's what you're seeing down there. Michael, I think you might have been at that event with me. I was like, you don't have your own position besides being with Darren Bailey, but it has awakened a lot of people. They want to get more involved in government, and that hardcore group, far part of the right, which is usual and customary down in Southern Illinois, is starting to activate. So that's why you're seeing a lot of these primaries. And there's a lot of people that are good human beings that are down there that are just trying to hold the gate up and stop the flow of water that's come through like a sieve.
Yeah, no, you're right. Let's hit a couple more of these races. Let's do them quickly here. But I know money's starting to flow here for Met Hall. primarying Blane, Wilhour in 110. So you're seeing Ask Me also backed Matt Hall. IFT also came in for Matt Hall. The money's starting to come in. Hall's going up with digital ads that we've seen. Looks like he's going up on radio. He's going to be going up on TV. There's going to be, as we've been talking about, there's going to be a lot of money in this race, and it's likely to get bloody. So quickly, Michael, what are you seeing in that race?
Yeah, we're seeing the money starting to flow in. You know, there was questions a couple weeks, month ago or so, of whether or not that was going to materialize. But teachers union, you know, put in around 50 grand, I think, so far, in kind on digital TV, etc. Blane's been out there working the district very hard. So he's going to, you know, kind of take that approach, because he's not going to have the financial resources like Matt is going to.
Yeah.
I think Blane's going to be hard to beat down there no matter what. I've been down there in Southern Illinois. They love him. He gives over the same speech about, you know, his farmland, and his little stump speech about pigs and hogs. And I mean, it was great. I can't remember the whole thing because it took forever. And he talks about at the 10th of my speed. So I fell asleep probably about a minute and a half into it. But he is widely popular, and he's got a lot of support from guys like Tom DeVore, Darren Bailey down there. He's part of that Freedom Caucus group. You know, Hall can come in with whatever he wants. I still think he's going to be hard to beat.
Aaron, you know, let's just take a quick diversion here, but you and I know this because when Tom Morrison was a state representative for Palatine, how many times did you, me, and 100 others get phone calls from some of these same unions saying, we want to knock out Morrison, will you run, or can you find us a candidate? We promise we'll come in with gobs and gobs of money. This is the same playbook. It's been going on for a long time. And we even said, like, listen, whether you liked Tom or didn't like Tom back then, you know, you're not going to take him out. Same in Blane Wilhour. If you want to take him out in a general, you know, not in that district, but like, okay, maybe these people are vulnerable in a general election, but you're not going to beat them in a Republican primary. There's no space to their right.
Well, it's a lot of people down there like to campaign. I always told all those guys to go kick rocks because I was friends with Tom. We didn't always agree on every issue, but I respected him a lot. He worked hard in the district. He brought out Republican votes. He did what he did to do to be a very good state representative, and he voted exactly the way that I would have hoped that he would vote in probably 85% of the cases. But a lot of these guys like to go through a political exercise to seem relevant. You know, who doesn't like to hear their own voice? Who doesn't like to see their name on a lawn sign or a billboard? And, oh, I'm getting interviewed by this person and that person. Collin Corbett called me to be on his podcast. I got to clear my schedule in order to get to it. I mean, they like a lot of that, but at the end of the day, it is what I just said. It's a political exercise. It's an action of futility. I think Blane gets through it. I think they're just going to be a little fly in his ointment.
Yeah. All right, last one here. Let's talk about House District 102. So we talked about how Adam Niemerg had gotten kicked off the ballot because of not doing his petitions properly. Looks like the unions have found a write-in candidate against him. So beating someone like an Adam Niemerg or a Blane Wilhour, as we talked about, straight up in a primary, really, really difficult. Now, putting him in a situation where it's a write-in campaign, which means you're talking about a much, much smaller pool of candidates. Suddenly this race became real. Suddenly now Niemerg is going to have to run for his life here in this race. And the candidate that these unions found is not a slouch. I mean, Jim Acklin is the candidate. He's the interim mayor of Ogden. He's run before. He ran in 2016 and came fairly close, only lost by 6 in a 3-way race. So this one could end up being a race. Is Niemerg, of course, favored to win? Of course, he's the incumbent, but he's not going to have HRO's help. The unions are probably going to come in against him. This thing very well could become a full-on race, and Niemerg might be in trouble.
Dude, 100% he's in trouble. If you take a look at the statement by the minority leader, Tony McCombie, she said it very, very, very clearly, kindly, and I love her about it. She said if he would have been a member of our caucus, he would have been on the ballot. Right.
Yeah, so that was a mic drop quote. I have to give McCombie and her press team credit. That was mic drop right there.
Right. Well, and I was looking at it and I said that kind of speaks volumes to it, right? It speaks to kind of tell you where they're at, right? You can't not be a part of the team, and then when the house is on fire, start saying, "Hey guys, you can help me bail the water." I mean, this is politics. It doesn't operate like that. And I like Adam. I've met him several times. I think he's a great character. I love to have a beer with him. I'm going to see him when I'm down in Edward County doing their Lincoln Day dinner. They keep bringing us a Chicago boy down there to kind of light up the room. But he's going to have a race on his hand. And then at the end of it, it's going to be about organization. And when you got one leg cut off because you don't have HRO doing it and you don't have the organization that you need to be able to be successful, because if you had that organization, you would be on the ballot, right? And so he's going to start looking for any kind of lifeline that he can get anywhere out there. He's going to.
Where are you going to find it? I mean, we've already seen there's no money there for Darren Bailey. There's no money there to save some of these other candidates in primary. So what's left to help someone like a Niemerg? He's gonna have to mortgage the family farm. I mean, that's what it's gonna have to be. I mean,
really, elections take money. Collin, you know that. I see where you're sitting over there in Inverness, right? You know what I mean? These are things that have to be able to take place and happen. And if you don't have that infrastructure, you don't have those dollars and able to compete, the union's going to come in strongly on Jim Acklin. He's got some name ID, which you referenced already. And they don't have to beat him by 500 votes. They only got to beat him by one, right? The guy that wins by one, what do you know what they call him? They call him the winner. I mean, Collin, you run a couple of my campaigns where 10,000 person race, we win by 40 votes.
Win to win, man.
Win to win.
History is written by the victors.
The issue, unfortunately, here is that that both candidates did not file in every single county of this district. Correct. So you're gonna
kudos to our buddy Finkston for digging that gem up.
So it's going to be a matter of who can get as many votes from the counties where they're actually allowed to be a legal write-in candidate. This is a race all about name ID. I'm not really concerned about conservative credentials as much in this race because it's a battle for how many people can write in your name. It's not a one-on-one with two people on the ballot. So this is this name ID. With the unions coming in, there's going to be money behind Niemerg to run up his name ID.
Acklin, you mean?
Acklin, my apologies. The name behind Acklin to drive up his name ID first. They could just keep dropping yard signs and mailers and say, write in this guy. He's a conservative. Okay, nobody else is on the ballot. Sounds like a winner. I think that's what you need to get this race done.
Yeah. Here's the deal. This is only going to be a placeholder for 2 years anyways, right? Whoever wins this one, now that you've seen the vulnerability, you see that there's blood in the water. I think that somebody comes in 2 years, no matter who are the winners over here, and comes up and starts really chopping at it. Because this is where I would be running if I wanted to make it to Illinois House.
Listen, you're not wrong. I mean, vulnerability breeds long-term challenges. So this is a small mistake to not notarize your damn statement of candidacy is going to lead to 2-4+ years of headaches, if he even makes it that far. Michael, give us the closing word on this, and we'll go to the next topic.
I mean, I think Adam had an opportunity here to kind of like bring some more people into the fold. Like, we heard that he was talking to HRO about potentially paying his dues. I know he made a lot of calls to some of the more establishment members and was, trying to court support there. But then when they were in session a week and a half ago, he kind of rolled it all back in and said, never mind, just kidding. Like, we're charting our own path here. So it's his own doing. They didn't notarize the petition. Or the statement of candidacy. That's why he got kicked off the ballot. He missed his opportunity to kind of unite people behind him. So good luck. I mean, $342 in the Freedom Caucus account. It's not going to get you far.
Well, this is what we keep saying. Like you've got to be able to know what you're doing politically and actually be tactically sound. And we keep seeing those challenges from this group. All right, briefly, anything you guys see in the financial reports, the federal financial reports? Really only I saw 2 Republicans do okay. In the 17th, you saw Joe McGraw raise almost $250,000. That's awesome. Now, unfortunately, the incumbent Sorensen raised $600K, so there's still a bit of a delta there, but it's a really solid fundraising number from Joe McGraw, so kudos to him. IL-17 is still our best congressional pickup opportunity this year, so I was happy to see that. The only other candidate I saw who's in a race, obviously LaHood did awesome, and that's great to see, but who's actually in a race, the only other candidate I saw do semi-well is Jerry Evans at 11, raised over $100K, so kudos to him. Otherwise, it was pretty bad for Republicans across the board of these federal financial reports. Anything you guys see that stood out to you?
I would just say, obviously, like the numbers themselves matter, but in some of these, like, Judge Joe McGraw, Jerry Evans, like, they don't really have like challengers in the primary, right? And you're seeing that positive momentum on their fundraising numbers. So I'm interested to see, this first quarter and, second quarter, what are they able to put up? Are they trending in the right direction? But I was really pleased to see the McGraw numbers there, what they were. I mean, he raised a third of what the incumbent raised, and that's a priority number 1 race for the Democrats. So he's showing to those outside groups, hey, I can bring money in on my own, like, come back me up.
Yeah.
I think another one, you take a look at Jerry. If you look at Jerry Evans, he did pick up a couple of endorsements. He got 2 state senators that joined on today. He's got one out in McHenry, which I think is a target-rich environment for him to be successful over there. But separate from those guys, I think one race you should also just kind of keep a little eye on, or a slanted eye like mine, is to keep an eye on Mark Rice. He's running into there in the 8th. He's been at a lot of events recently. He's put some pretty good numbers together. He's had a couple fundraisers, put a few bucks together. I know I'm a little biased because what kind of Asian doesn't love rice, right? I mean, that's right. One of our main staples. So you know,
now, he just needs another 20 mil to compete with Raja, and he'll be okay.
Raja's only sitting on $15 million. Let's not get overreacting here, right? You know, he's got name ID from his son Max doing the stand-up comedy routine all the way through the 9th congressional against Jankowski last year. But I know, and all jokes aside, I think Mark's got at least one of the more solid plans in a hard-to-win district. And you know, he's putting up a few bucks over there, and you know, who doesn't want to hear that jingle of rice baby going through your radio as you're getting your way to work during the morning drive or the afternoon drive back? So just keep an eye on the 8th on the side.
So we're talking about Raja here. So we got to, you know, Democrat Chris, we have to talk about something else here. Raja again had a phenomenal fundraising quarter, and again, after every quarter, it's the same conversation from the talking heads, and we're talking heads now, guys. Let's be honest with ourselves. And the talking heads are going to say, is Durbin running again? Because Durbin only raised a little over 100K, and I know it's not election year for him, but he only raised a little over 100K, and Raja's got 15 million in the bank. Is something happening here? I'll tell you, this talking head is going to tell you, don't believe Dick Durbin's not running again until he's wheeled out to a press conference that says, I'm not running again. Because Dick Durbin tells people after every election, oh, yeah, I ain't running again. You can have my seat. And he promises to like 6 people. And then he comes around and says, oh, I'm running again. I got you next time, though. And now the list is about 20 people long. So we'll have to see how that goes. But something to keep an eye on, always.
And Durbin's like the white Jesse White. Like that, he will be there until he physically, literally cannot be there.
Well, you know what? There is a value, though, and this is kind of kudos to some of our Republicans that are running for Congress and seats that are going to be a hard challenge to win. You know, by having a guy like Mark Rice that's running in the 8th, it keeps that $15 million in Raja's pocket, right? And it's not being diverted to somewhere else across the country or across Illinois. Now, Raja's known for keeping a tight wallet, right? He's not a guy that's going to do a lot of shifting because, again, you're probably right. He's going to be looking for higher office sooner than later. But when you look at all these different races of Jerry Evans and whatever, some of these token candidates that we have across the spectrum here in the 17 congressional districts in Illinois, we do have to give them a little level of respect because it does keep our people engaged and it does bring some ballots up the ballot and down the ballot.
Fair. Appreciate that. All right, let's jump to our Empower to Win topic this week. Every week we've got a topic that's a political strategy topic. Empower to Win is our Cor Strategies new portal that we've developed for candidates and politicos. Helps you get advice. There's a knowledge base. There's a forum. There's information in there. There's tactics. There's exclusive polling results, which, by the way, in a couple of weeks, we're going to have a groundbreaking poll that we're going to be rolling out, and I'm really pumped about that. We're going to talk tactics here. So a couple of weeks ago, Josh McBroom, Naperville City Council member, also a former client of ours, did something that tactically, if you just done it slightly different, probably would have been way stronger, but it was an interesting thing. So what he did was during a city council meeting there in Naperville, he basically made the point that, hey, a lot of these more progressive members of our community are sitting here screaming, saying we need to do more as government. We need to do more to help these migrants. So, hey, you know what? You guys want to see more done? Here's a sign-in sheet. Are you going to take any of these families and put them in your home? Because you know none of them will. Most of them are giant hypocrites, and they're never going to lift a finger personally to help these people. They just want government paid for by the rich to cover these problems. They're not going to lift a finger to do it. So the concept here was fairly solid, and he could have gotten a ton of positive press. But what he did is he did it more tongue-in-cheek. He didn't do it where it was very clear. He didn't control the narrative going into it and going out of it. And so what ended up happening is 2 things. One, nationally, some people spun it as wealthy Naperville politician wants to make residents house these migrants. Even like a right of center and very, very conservative national outlets were ripping into McBloom and were ripping into Naperville for this, even though they didn't realize actually that he was on their side on this. And then locals, I've talked to a number of people in Naperville, locals have said they thought this was again, they thought the opposite. They thought this was McBroom going against them, that he was not actually taking the conservative position, that he thought they should do more for migrants. He eventually turned it around. He got some good press hits on Fox News, and he finally kind of turned the narrative around. But the story here, the reason why this is an Empower to Win topic is even when you have a really good creative idea like Josh had on the situation, you've got to make sure you do it right. Most times in politics, it's not what you do, it's how you do it. This was a brilliant, I'll say it was a brilliant idea, but it was tactically rolled out not as strongly as it could have been, and it led to a lot of problems. And I have a feeling, unfortunately, that Josh is going to face these challenges for a while, especially locally. Whereas if he had rolled it out like it could have been, this could have been just a brilliant political play. So curious what you guys are hearing or what your guys' thoughts are in the situation.
You know it's bad.
I think
when my mother-
Go ahead, Chris.
You know it's bad when my mother asked me at the kitchen table, "Do you know Josh McBroom?" I said, "Well, yeah, Mom, I know Josh pretty well, actually." She says, "What's wrong with you? Do you know what did?" That's how my mother is, of course. But yeah, it's the same thing I heard all across the southwest suburbs in the last few weeks, is that McBroom wants to put migrants in our homes, and it's a violation of the Fourth Amendment and all this stuff. And you have to try to explain to these, well-meaning, concerned people that that's not what Josh meant when he did this. But again, it's how you say it, not what you say. And I think this could have been avoided had it been explained a little bit better. Phenomenal idea. Love making rich yuppies and rich people from Naperville mad, because I hate those people. But again, could have been done better.
Hey, I mean, I don't understand what the real problem is. You got a family of 3 living in a seven-bedroom house. They got a pool. They got a hot tub. They got a built-out basement with its own built-in bar. I mean, let's open up the doors. I mean, I would do it at my house, but I've already got 6 kids. We got 7 rooms in our house, and I got a human being in each one of them, right? So we're kind of bursting at the seams already. But
and you're not even Catholic, and you got that many kids.
I'm not a Catholic. Well, I drink like a Catholic, but besides that, I think we could just send them down to Michael Butler down there, man. They got that farmland down there. They got the big silos. They got he would be perfect.
Here's the headline: Aaron Delmar wants to put migrants in silos in Southern Illinois. There's your headline.
I'm not saying silos, but I'm not being racist. I'm just trying to make a little bit of jokes. But some of them have farming ability already, right? Like, what's the big deal? Right, we got fields. We got, I think that the migrant crisis is I'm joking, and I'm sure that's going to be clipped out at some point if I ever run for anything again. When Collin comes out with his earth-shattering poll that says that I'm, told to win the gubernatorial race in 2026, which is coming out, and Collin's going to send that out in a couple of weeks. That'll be clipped out, but jokes aside, I mean, we do have a serious crisis, and you have to have a solution for it. And I think where he was coming from that was like, hey, do you want to be a screamer or yeller, or do you want to get involved, right? Yep. If you want to be in that game, grab a helmet, get in the game. I mean, that's what we really need. We need more solutions.
His quote, I mean, you just clip out where he finally clarified this and gave a really solid quote. He said, these are the people that voted for this. We've got thousands of illegals come into the area, and they're homeless in the middle of winter. You voted for this. You sign up, be the change, open your house. Like, there's some meat to this. And honestly, I think it is the nuts and bolts of this. This was a brilliant idea to push this on. Hey, you know what? You guys want to push that we got to be doing more. What are you doing to fix this problem? You more wealthy progressives in the suburbs that want to see the change, but not in my backyard. Like, let's call out the hypocrisy. So the concept was solid. Just again, the actual tactics of it weren't sound. And this is something I've said this quote a number of times amongst my team, but maybe only once or twice on podcasts. My old preacher from back in the day had a quote that was always very convicting for me, which was, if you're wrong in the way that you're right, you're still wrong. In that it's how you do things that matters. And that's something I run afoul of a lot, because I can tend to do things the wrong way or get angry or, let my Irish temper come out.
No.
And if you're, it's crazy. And if you're wrong in the way that you're right, then guess what? You're wrong. And in this case, the idea was super solid. Just the rollout could have been so much better. And this could have been a great thing for us. All right, let's move on. 2 more things I want to talk about, because we got to talk about it. So the Vernon Area Public Library. We got to get Matt DeRay back on one of these things, because I got to hear a good classic Matt DeRay rant on this. They hired a progressive political scientist to educate voters. So they have brought on this political scientist whose job is going to be to educate voters throughout the Vernon Township area leading up to the next election. So you'd think, okay, by the way, tax dollars being spent on this. So, you'd think if a local government's going to bring somebody in to educate voters, it needs to be somebody who's fair and balanced, somebody who maybe isn't going to pick sides. So we just on a whim decided to pull up their voting history. Lane's going to pull it up on screen, and oh, cool. Oh, shocker. Wouldn't you know it? All Democrat. That's super surprising. Let's see what this person's credentials are, because it said in the article her specialties are gun politics, immigration policy, race and ethnic politics, and political psychology. That sounds like this is going to be somebody who's really fair and balanced. So we looked and pulled up, Lane's going to pull it up on screen here, one of the books that she wrote. Let me see if I can pull this up on my end so I can talk about it. Race, Rights, and Rifles, The Origins of the NRA and Contemporary Gun Culture. She attacks Republicans and traditional values in Illinois or American culture for causing all these problems and leading to these gun problems in our country. This belief in white male supremacy and maintaining racial and gender hierarchies. Scroll through. Lane's bringing it up now. You can scroll through it on your own. But quote after quote after quote of far, far, far left progressive politics. So if you live in Vernon Township, your tax dollars are going to pay for an ultra progressive to educate the voters in your township on how they should vote in the upcoming election. I've never seen a local government pull crap like this. This is ridiculous. I have never seen this.
Well, I think it's hilarious because, and I'm not even that offended. I'm a member of the Vernon Township Republicans as their state central commitment. And I mean, first the question everyone should be asking is, who goes to libraries anymore? I mean, we had this thing, it's kind of a big deal. They call it the internet, right? A lot of people have them on these things that they carry around with them called phones. So if you need to get information or you want to read a book, it's getting past your tablet, you're reading it online. But the idea behind this organization that is supposed to be nonpartisan, non-political, right? Because when you run for public library board, it's a nonpartisan position. To be able to be using those taxpayer dollars, I mean, this just screams for the media to get involved. I mean, I'm a little shocked that I haven't heard about this earlier. Collin, I got to give you kudos to this. This is one that you got past me because usually I like to be educated on a lot of these issues. But I mean, it's incredibly offensive. Can you imagine if the Palatine Public Library Board decided to bring in, Charlie Kirk to talk about people and educate them about voting? People's hair would be on fire. They'd be going crazy, right? If I brought in, Stone, you know what I mean, to come out here and say, hey, this is what you need to be educated. And I wrote this book and I wrote that book. People would be jumping in the air like they had a fire.
They'd be on every TV station. They'd be vilifying it.
Right. And so to have this going on in Illinois, I mean, sadly, it's not shocking or surprising. But I think this is something that I think really people should be taking a look at. And I think there might be some legal ramifications for doing something like this.
Yeah, this definitely needs to be something. We talked earlier about something the Republican Party could use to their advantage. We should be making all sorts of hay about this, because this is like, even people who aren't overly political can look at this and be like, oh, that's a step too far.
100%.
All right. Well, looks like Chris and Michael are not overly interested in this topic, so we'll have Matt DeRay come on. And
Hold on.
Michael's still trying to figure out when all the migrants are going to be coming down to Southern Illinois. He's getting the silo ready. He's starting to fluff the pillows and bring out the blankets. You know what I mean?
He's doing math to figure out where we're going to put him.
In any case, all I have to say is patronage isn't dead. But the problem is patronage went from getting your buddy down the street a job at Streets and Sand, and now it's getting the person with postgraduate degrees a kick feet up job at the local library board to indoctrinate children. That's patronage nowadays. Stop looking at what old patronage is.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron, you mentioned the point of libraries. And anytime I bring that up, what I'm told in response is that libraries are very helpful for poor, lower income families. And that's who's going through these systems. So you talk about what is the goal of this. Politically, it's very clear what the goal of this is. The goal of this is to make sure that these younger families, these minorities, these lower income people go out strong and vote Democrat in 2024 in the November election. It's obvious what the goal is here. And I can't believe, when the Daily Herald did a story on this that was more of a puff piece than anything, I can't believe that even the liberal media would allow this to happen without being, guys, okay, this is too much. I mean, if they're going to go after Tiffany Henyard down in Chris's region, this seems like this is something right for a clickbait kind of story from the media.
Well, maybe we need to start hiring Republicans at all our libraries down here and let them, give their campaign talking points.
Hey, if it's okay if Vernon does it, then you know what? In every red county, let's start using taxpayer dollars to educate the voters.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm still a little shaken from Chris talking about, patronage job. He kept on saying, I thought he was saying parentage. And I'm like, man, I'm done with having kids. Right. So I thought, he's got me a little bit on tilt. But going back to what you're saying, you're 100% right. There are a lot of people that do utilize the libraries on the physical form because it's a place that they can study, that doesn't charge them $9 for a coffee like Starbucks does, right, to get that education. But either way, it is still, taking a very strong political position and trying to indoctrinate whatever groups that come through the door and try to get them on their side. And I think that's a form that usually in Illinois, you can't do kind of politicizing on public grounds. And that's kind of what I was saying. I mean, this is just a covert way of trying to change hearts and minds to get people to vote in their general direction. And I think, you know, these types of things need to be highlighted more. And if the media found out, I think Collin's 100% correct. I think, you know, even moderate people be losing their minds that this is what my money's going to. This is to be buying books and educating people, but not on any specific thing, on a wide variety of views. And when you take
listen, someone with more time than me, there's some great researchers we've got out there, needs to take every single one of this lady's books and clip out, because there have got to be dozens and dozens of crazy far left progressive quotes, and clip those things. And let's use those in fundraising appeals, and let's put that out there. Let's make some hay on this thing, because this absolutely should not be allowed and cannot be allowed. And Aaron, you mentioned earlier, there may even be legal grounds to go after this, because you're using tax dollars on this thing. All right, let's go to the last topic here, just because we've got Aaron, you were a candidate and have been a candidate about 300 times. So I'm curious what
that
your
wins,
thoughts are.
Right? Not a perennial candidate that loses. I'm a candidate that wins. That's a big difference.
There you go. So there was a bill that was put forward by Representative Rashid. I don't want to screw up his first name, so I'll just say Representative Rashid. House Bill 4644. That basically, if you're a candidate, you should be watching this very, very closely, because it amends the election code. It basically says that if you at any point say anything that falsely represents an individual or intends to harm their reputation or their electoral prospects within 90 days of an election, you can be sued. Or to even change the voting behavior of electors by deceiving them. Who decides what's deceiving or incorrectly putting information? This is a massive gift to the trial lawyers in the state, and it puts every single candidate at risk 90 days before an election to be dragged into court for anything and everything that you say. This is a horrible, horrible bill that I think anybody involved in politics should be watching to make sure this thing dies in Springfield, because this is a problematic bill.
Well, you have to understand what the purpose.
Well, I was just going to say, these people apparently hate the Constitution because they don't want anybody to have the freedom of speech. And from a guy like Collin said that likes to run for office several times, I can tell you what, I'll be running my mouth hard for 89 days before that election, right? I'll be running real, real hard to make sure that all my things get out. But look, that is an actual reverse of what is currently the status quo. Because right now, the rights, the grounds that you need to have for defamation or libel when you're running in a political race are even higher, because you signed up to be a political candidate, right? So if Collin or Michael's running against me from Illinois and says Aaron Delmar's got a gray beard and I don't like him because he's Mexican, which I'm not, Filipino, if you didn't know that. But whatever he happens to say or whatever he wants to do, I can't sue him because it's political protected speech, right? And that threshold, like I mentioned, is even higher because it's political speech. So if you go in exactly the opposite direction, I mean, and it makes everything else subjective too. What is negative speech? What is mistruth? What is that, right? I mean, I do have a gray beard and I do have black one, but maybe I don't on election day because I decided to shave it because the winter's over. Now, is he lying? We're going to end up in court with legal fees going through. And the joke about the whole thing, too, is that if you're doing this in Cook County, it's going to take you 4 years to even litigate the situation. Right. You might have a different candidate by the time that gets over with.
All this is a way to slow down an election 90 days beforehand. Because as soon as your opponent, because if you're an incumbent like perhaps Rashid is, and you're running against, you have an opponent who's challenging you in a primary, you can, as soon as your opposition sends out the first negative mailer against you, court, I'm going to hold you up in court. I'm going to hold you up with legal fees that you're going to take from your campaign account. So now you can't pay for another mailer against me. And if you do another mailer, that's another court fee. That's another court fee. That's all this is. It gives a benefit to candidates who are either an incumbent or have an exceptionally large war chest to keep suing their opposition and hold them up in court. And Rashid might have some ulterior motives behind this. He has a primary opponent. And Rashid, he might lose. He might be in trouble. He might be pretty scared. Who knows? I just think it's ironic because, all this stuff that, Rashid used against Mike Zaleski last year, he would have been held up in court for years.
Yep.
With some of the shit he was flinging last year.
I mean, they were not even, I remember that race. They were saying so many things in that race that was like, man, you have twisted 13 different things to be able to put this on a mail piece. And then now for him to sort of say, oh, no, you can't do that. Like, it's the height of hypocrisy, though, with politics, so I'm not surprised.
Yeah, they need a cowboy up. Listen, if you're going to run for office in Illinois, you need to be a tough cage fighter type human being, right? right? I mean, if you're not a fighter in Illinois, you shouldn't be getting
you
involved.
can't handle. You might end up on Leno, or you might end up being nationally famous if you're running for office. So
But not only that, but what I'm saying is that you signed the statement of candidacy that you're getting involved in a fight, right? That's just like signing a waiver anywhere else you go. You want to get on the roller coaster, you want to get in the cage, you got to sign on the waiver, right? So it's a dogfight, and that's what tests everybody's mettle and to see if they can be able to hold up a public spotlight, all right? When you sign up to be a candidate, you can't get upset if somebody brings out something from your past, no matter how far back they go. I mean, Collin, you ran one of my campaigns. They were bringing up stuff when I was 19 years old in one of these races. It doesn't matter, right? That is where this guy is an infringement on the freedom of speech. He doesn't like the way that he's been attacked or he's had attacked other people, and they're going to water down elections. I think it's bad for Illinois. I think it's bad for the United States. I think that if you want to be in public office, you need to have daylight on anything and everything that you had done. Like it, don't like it. And this is coming from somebody that's got 16 closets full of skeletons, right? I got a whole body pile stacked up, right? A target-rich environment for anyone that wants to attack. But I signed up for it, so that's what happens.
Yeah. All right. The reason why these topics are important is not only because Election Day is coming up very, very soon on March 19th, but if you live in DuPage or Kane County, guess what? There's actually an election next Thursday. If you are a homeowner or a landowner in DuPage or Kane County, then on February 8th, you actually can vote for the Soil and Water Conservation District. You have to actually go in to their offices from 7 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Lane's going to bring up on screen the link with information about that election. I've asked a bunch of people in Kane and DuPage, and they had no idea that this was happening. Apparently it happens every year. I just found it at the bottom of some random page. It's not promoted, it's not put out there, but there's 5 positions, 3 of which are up, and this is an election for landowners in 2 different counties that nobody knows about. So we want to do our civic duty here and at least tell our viewers, hey, if you lived in those 2 counties, let people know there's actually an election happening next week, believe it or not. And then of course, March 19th is the big daddy. It's the primary coming up. All right, closing thoughts from anybody. Aaron, you're our special guest. Why don't you kick us off? Any closing thoughts before we close this down?
No, then I had a great time. I enjoyed this. I hope nobody was offended by any of the comedy that I brought into it. Just trying to keep it lively. Fortunately, I don't have a cigar like Collin does that I could be puffing along the whole way. Just want to make sure we had a lot of fun today. I appreciate you, Collin, taking that strong step, going through that whole cloud of fear and having me on here and being brave. So I appreciate it and hope you have me back.
Chris, Michael, what do you got?
I have to say, Aaron, you were a wonderful guest. I remember some of your speeches when you were running for lieutenant governor a couple of years ago, and they were by far some of the best speeches I heard last cycle. So I'm glad that energy got back to the room here, the smoke-filled room, as it were. We've called out a lot of people, as I always do during these smoke-filled rooms. So if you have a problem with me, you know where to find me, and good luck.
Just text me. I'll give you his address.
There you go. Thanks for joining us, Aaron. I know gas prices are high, but you got to get down here at some point.
Oh, yeah. I'm coming down to Edgar County. Come see me at their Lincoln Day dinner. I'll be doing the road show over there, right? I'm going to do 45 minutes of my comedy routine. If you want to go west, you can catch me at the Joe Davies Lincoln Day dinner. I'll be up there in Galena, Illinois, at the home of USC's Grant. I'll be doing my road show over there. It's a lot of fun. Both ones.
So that's why you grew the beard. It's the whole Grant effect.
I want to give that whole Yellowstone appeal, man. I'm a man of the people. You got to give them what they want, right? And in those areas,
we're gonna have to have Lane trim this part for like a separate, like a promo video for Aaron Del Mar, his tour across the state of Illinois, everywhere he's going.
So good. Well, I want to come down.
I don't know if you're a Rip Wheeler. If you're on Yellowstone, I think you're. I don't know. If you're trying for Rip Wheeler, I don't know if I'd go that route for you. Maybe Teeter. Maybe you're more of a Teeter.
Right. Well, thanks a lot for having me, Collin. You always put on a great show. It's good to see you again, my friend. And for everybody out there that watches us.
Thank you to you guys for joining. Thank you to Cornel. Sorry that he had to run, but we're happy to have him on for as long as we had him. We appreciate you guys for watching. Thanks to Lane Davis, our producer, and now Abby, my wife, who helps with scheduling our special guests. We will catch you next week on the Smoke-Filled Room.